There's a specific sound that expensive heels make against Spanish marble. Not the hollow clack of department store pumps, but a solid, assured tap that speaks of craftsmanship and the weight of real money. My Laubautins announced my arrival at La Dama with that distinctive sound, a sound I had worked for years to earn. The maître d' recognized me immediately. "Senora Castellan, welcome. Your party is already seated in the private dining room." I smiled, letting my hand brush lightly against the antique mahogany paneling as we walked. The restaurant occupied a modernist mansion in the Eichsample district, all curved details and stained glass windows catching the golden light of Barcelona's dusk. Under different circumstances, I would have paused to admire the gaudy-inspired touches, the way the evening light filtered through amber glass onto the polished floors. As an event planner, I had a professional appreciation for spaces like this, venues that whispered exclusivity rather than shouting it. But tonight wasn't about professional appreciation. It was Margarita Castellan's 70th birthday, my mother-in-law's platinum celebration, and I was already 7 minutes late. Fashionably so, but late nonetheless. "Right this way," the host said, gesturing toward the private dining room where a gentle murmur of conversation and the occasional tinkle of crystal floated out. I smoothed down my burgundy Valentino dress, classic, elegant, appropriate for the occasion without trying too hard. Exactly the image I always aimed to project in front of Xavier's family. Never too much, never too little. Walking the tightrope of their expectations had become second nature over our 3 years of marriage. The private room unfolded before me like a theater set. 15 people arranged around a long table draped in cream linen, candles casting everyone in the most flattering light possible, arrangements of white peonies and orchids creating an atmosphere of restrained opulence. The tableware gleamed the Castellan's own silver, naturally brought to the restaurant specifically for the occasion. Heaven forbid Margarita should eat with utensils that had touched common lips. Xavier spotted me first, rising halfway from his chair with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Darling, there you are," he called, voice carrying across the room. All conversation paused. All eyes turned to me. I smiled, comfortable in the spotlight. Before becoming Xavier Castellan's wife, I had been Elena Morales, founder and CEO of Elevado Events, the most sought-after luxury event planning firm in Barcelona. Being watched was part of my professional currency. "Happy birthday, Margarita," I said, crossing to my mother-in-law and bending to kiss her powdered cheek. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and thinly veiled disapproval. "Elena," she acknowledged, barely turning her face. "We were about to order without you." I smiled through the jab. The gallery opening ran late. The artist was particularly chatty. "How lovely for you to have such interesting work acquaintances," she replied, making interesting sound like a communicable disease. I turned to find my seat beside Xavier, but something was wrong. The place settings formed a perfect, unbroken line around the table. There was no gap, no empty chair, no place for me. "Xavier," I said quietly. My husband looked up, surprise registering on his face as he glanced around the table. Then came the smile, the same smile he used when he forgot to tell his parents we were living together before we got married, or when he accidentally excluded me from family photos at Christmas. "Oh," he said, his tone light and amused. "It seems they've forgotten a setting. Silly mistake." Across the table, Xavier's cousin Alejandra covered her smile with a manicured hand. His brother Raphael didn't bother hiding his smirk. "I'll call the waiter," Xavier offered, but made no move to actually do so. A small, choked laugh escaped from somewhere down the table. Then another. Then Margarita's voice, crystal clear and amused. "Perhaps they thought you wouldn't make it." Again, that's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. My missing seat wasn't an oversight by the restaurant staff. It was a message, carefully orchestrated and delivered with perfect timing on my mother-in-law's special night, in front of the entire Castellan clan. "You don't belong here. You never did." 6 years earlier, I was knee-deep in peonies and panic, directing a fleet of waiters through the garden of a 17th-century Maja outside Barcelona. The client, a tech billionaire's wife with more money than taste, had requested a rustic Spanish experience for her husband's 50th birthday. What she meant was she wanted Instagram-worthy paella cooked over open fires by photogenic locals, all without having to encounter actual rusticity. Elena, my assistant Lucia, appeared at my elbow, anxiety radiating from her like heat. "The ice sculptor says the falcon's wings keep melting in this heat, and the flamenca dancers are stuck in traffic on the AP7. I checked my watch. 2 hours until guests arrived. "Tell Jorge to move the sculpture to the wine cellar for now. We'll bring it out just before the reveal. And call the dance troupe's manager, tell him I'll pay for the police escort if necessary, but they need to be here in 40 minutes. Lucia nodded and disappeared. I surveyed the transformation taking place around me. The centuries-old stone walls draped with twinkling lights, the long tables set under olive trees, the temporary kitchen where 3 different Michelin-starred chefs were currently arguing over burner space. This was my world, creating perfect moments from chaos, turning the impossible into the inevitable. I had built Elevado events from nothing 5 years earlier, after leaving a soul-crushing corporate job. My parents, a university professor and a civil servant, had been appalled. "You're throwing away security," my father had said. "For what?" "To plan parties for rich people." But I had seen something they hadn't. In Barcelona's post-recession landscape, the rich were getting richer, and they all wanted to show it off. I had started with small dinner parties, then weddings, then corporate galas. Now, at 32, I commanded fees that would have made my 25-year-old self faint. "Excuse me, are you in charge here?" I turned to find a man watching me with unconcealed amusement. Tall, with the kind of casual elegance that comes from generations of good tailoring, he seemed completely out of place among the controlled chaos of event setup. "I'm Elena Morales, the event planner," I said, extending my hand. "And you are?" "Currently lost," he replied with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I'm supposed to be at the Rivera Martinez anniversary party, but I think I've taken a wrong turn." "That's tomorrow night," I said. "Different Maja, about 20 kilometers south of here." He raised an eyebrow. "You know every event happening in Catalonia, only the ones worth knowing about." I matched his smile, then checked my watch again. "I'm sorry, but I have a crisis involving a melting ice falcon to attend to." "Of course," he said, stepping aside with an exaggerated bow. "Far be it from me to come between a woman and her falcon." I walked away, feeling his eyes follow me across the garden. An hour later, as I was inspecting the bar setup, he reappeared, holding 2 glasses of cava. "Peace offering," he said, extending one flute toward me. "For interrupting your work. I'm Xavier Castellan, by the way." The name registered immediately. The Castellans were old Barcelona money textiles, shipping, now diversified into tech and real estate. Not quite nobility, but the next thing to it in Catalonia's complex social hierarchy. "What brings you back here, Senor Castellan?" "Still lost." "Intrigued," he corrected. "And please, call me Xavier." "Intrigued by what?" "By you." He sipped his cava, watching me over the rim of his glass. "I've been to dozens of these events, but I've never seen anyone command a space the way you do. It's impressive." Under normal circumstances, I would have dismissed this as a line, but there was something disarming about his directness. The way his eyes stayed fixed on mine rather than wandering to the parts of me men usually noticed first. "I'm not sure if you're complimenting my event planning skills or my ability to yell at vendors in 3 languages, I said. "Both," he replied. "Definitely both." He stayed until the party began, watching from the sidelines as I orchestrated the final touches. When the birthday boy arrived to gasps of delight from his guests, Xavier leaned close and whispered, "You're an alchemist." "Just good at my job," I replied. "Let me take you to dinner sometime," he said. "Somewhere where you don't have to work." I really looked at him. His confidence wasn't the brittle kind I was used to in successful men. There was something solid beneath it, something that suggested he had nothing to prove. "I'm busy," I said. "Until when?" "Until I'm not." He laughed, a genuine sound that made me want to hear it again. "I'll wait," he said, slipping his card into my hand. 3 weeks later, I called him. Our first date was at a tiny seafood place in Barcelona that had no website and no social media presence, just perfect arroz negro and a wine list scribbled on a chalkboard. I was impressed that he had chosen somewhere so understated. "My grandfather used to bring me here when I was a boy," he explained, breaking bread and offering me the first piece. He said the measure of a good restaurant isn't how expensive it is, but whether the owner's mother still works in the kitchen. Over the next few months, Xavier showed me a Barcelona I hadn't known existed, despite living there my entire adult life. Hidden courtyards in the Gothic quarter where elderly men played chess in silence. A private art collection housed in an unmarked apartment in Gracia, viewable only by personal invitation. A vineyard in Penedès where the owner greeted him like a son and opened bottles that weren't available for purchase at any price. It was intoxicating, not the access itself, but watching Xavier navigate these spaces with such ease, such birthright confidence. He belonged everywhere. And when I was with him, so did I. "Tell me about your family," I said one night as we sat on his terrace overlooking the Mediterranean. Something flickered across his face, so briefly I almost missed it. "Traditional," he said finally. "Very traditional." What does that mean? It means they still live as if the last century never happened. He swirled the wine in his glass. My father runs the family businesses mostly from the golf course these days. My mother maintains our social position with military precision. My brother does whatever they tell him to. And you? Xavier's smile turned rueful. I'm the family disappointment. I studied art history instead of business, lived in London for 5 years, and refused to join the right clubs. How rebellious, I teased. You laugh, but choosing your own path isn't something the Castellans have traditionally encouraged. He took my hand, running his thumb across my knuckles. They're going to hate you, you know. My stomach dropped. Why? Because you're self-made. Because you work for a living. Because you don't have the right background or connections. He pressed a kiss to my palm. Because you're exactly what I want, not what they picked out for me. I should have recognized the warning for what it was. Instead, I heard only the last part. I was what he wanted. The rest seemed like a problem for another day, a challenge to overcome, not an insurmountable barrier. How naive I was. When Xavier proposed 8 months later, he did it on a private sailboat off the Costa Brava, with champagne chilling and the sunset painting everything gold. It was perfect, like something I might have arranged for a client. Too perfect, perhaps. Looking back, I should have questioned why he hadn't wanted to propose in front of anyone else. Why there were no witnesses to this joining of our lives. Meeting his family came after the ring was already on my finger. A strategic move on Xavier's part, I later realized. The engagement dinner was at the Castellan family home, a 19th century mansion in Pedralbes, the city's most exclusive neighborhood. I wore my best dress and brought an obscenely expensive bottle of wine. What a unique design, Margarita Castellan said when Xavier introduced us, her eyes flicking over my dress with surgical precision. Is that one of those online brands the young people are wearing? It's Dior, I replied. Oh, it looks so different from mine. Her smile could have cut glass. This set the tone for the entire evening. Every question was a trap, every compliment poisoned. Xavier tells us you plan events. His father, Javier, said over soup. Like a wedding planner. Corporate events, mostly, I replied. Luxury product launches, private celebrations, celebrity appearances. How fascinating, Margarita murmured, in a tone that suggested organizing dog fights might be more respectable. And you started this business yourself, with no family connections in the industry. From scratch, I confirmed. Remarkable, she said, exchanging a look with her husband. Such ambition. Xavier's brother Raphael was more direct. Essentially, you're a party planner who got lucky. Xavier's hand found mine under the table, squeezing in warning or support, I couldn't tell which. Elena's company handles events with 7-figure budgets, Rafa. The Moritz relaunch last year. That was her. I didn't realize, Raphael said, not sounding impressed in the slightest. I thought they would use someone more established. After dinner, while the men retreated to Javier's study for brandy, Margarita showed me the family photos lining the hallway. This is Xavier's grandfather with Franco, she said, pointing to a faded photograph. The Generalissimo was very fond of him. I see, I replied neutrally, wondering if she realized this wasn't the compliment she thought it was. And here's Xavier at his first communion. Isn't he handsome? Next to him is Isabella Cortez. They were inseparable as children. Her family has the most beautiful summer home in Sitges, right next to ours. She's recently divorced, poor thing. The message couldn't have been clearer if she'd written it on the wall. You are temporary. We have history. We have connections. We have a backup plan named Isabella. Later that night, in Xavier's apartment, I asked him why he hadn't defended me more forcefully against his family's barbs. They were just getting to know you, he said, loosening his tie. They'll come around. Your mother spent 20 minutes showing me pictures of your childhood girlfriend. Xavier laughed. Isabella. That was arranged playdate diplomacy. Our mothers were rivals who called a truce through forced childhood friendship. He pulled me close. Trust me, they'll adjust. They're just set in their ways. I wanted to believe him. More than that, I wanted to prove them wrong to show that I could belong in their world, even if I'd taken a different path to get there. So when Xavier suggested a small, private wedding rather than the elaborate affair I might have planned myself, I agreed. When he said it made more sense to move into his apartment in Eichsample rather than find a new place together, I didn't argue. When he proposed I scale back my work hours after the wedding to enjoy our life together, I compromised by delegating more to my team while maintaining control of the company. Each concession seemed small in the moment. It was only in aggregate that they revealed a pattern. My life bending around his, my identity being slowly whittled away to fit into the space his family deemed acceptable. And yet, I loved him. I loved his quiet intelligence, the way he looked at art with such reverence, how he could discuss politics or poetry with equal passion. I loved that he had chosen me despite his family's expectations. Or so I believed. Standing in La Dama's private dining room, staring at the place where my seat should have been, I felt something cold and clarifying wash over me. This wasn't just another slight to be endured. This was the culmination of 1,000 paper cuts, a public declaration of what they had always believed. I didn't deserve a place at their table. The worst part was Xavier's face, not shocked, not truly apologetic, but amused, as if this were an awkward but ultimately amusing faux pas, rather than a deliberate humiliation. I can stand, I offered, my voice steady despite the hurricane in my chest. Don't be ridiculous, Margarita said, her smile firmly in place. Xavier, call someone to bring another chair. Though it will throw off the whole seating arrangement, I so carefully planned. Another titter of laughter rippled around the table. I caught Raphael's eye. He didn't even bother to hide his satisfaction. In that moment, 3 years of accumulated slights crystallized into perfect clarity. The forgotten invitations to family events. The conversations that switched from Spanish to Catalan when I entered a room. The gifts Xavier's parents gave us that were always addressed only to him. The way his cousins tagged everyone but me in family photos posted to Instagram. I had spent 3 years trying to earn a place in this family, only to discover the game was rigged from the start. Actually, I said, picking up Margarita's crystal water glass, I think I'll make a toast first. The table quieted. Xavier's expression shifted from amusement to wariness. To Margarita, I said, raising the glass, for teaching me so much about hospitality. Her eyes narrowed slightly. And to the Castellan family, I continued, for finally being honest about where I stand. I set down the glass without drinking and turned to Xavier. You know what's interesting about event planning? You learn that nothing happens by accident. Every detail is deliberate. Elena, he began, his voice carrying a warning. Someone decided there would be no chair for me tonight. Someone approved the seating chart. Someone wanted me to stand here exactly as I am now, an outsider, a spectacle. The room had gone completely silent. The truly fascinating thing, I continued, gathering my clutch, is that none of you, not one, considered that this might be a dangerous game to play with someone who controls every major event space, catering company, and entertainment vendor in Barcelona. Margarita's face paled slightly. Elena, you're overreacting, Xavier said, standing now. It was a simple mistake. No, a simple mistake is forgetting to confirm a reservation, I replied. This was a statement, and I've received it, loud and clear. I smoothed my dress, buying myself a moment to ensure my voice wouldn't tremble. Enjoy your dinner, Margarita. I imagine it will be a night to remember. I turned and walked out, my Laubautin striking that perfect, expensive note against the marble floor. Behind me, I heard Xavier call my name, but he didn't follow. Of course he didn't. That would have required choosing me over them, and he had never been able to do that. Not when it truly mattered. Outside, the Barcelona night enveloped me in warm, jasmine-scented air. I walked half a block before pulling out my phone and making the first call. Antonio, it's Elena Morales. Yes, I know it's your night off. I need a favor, an urgent one. La Dama is about to have some problems with their kitchen. Significant problems. Next call, Marcel. I need you to cancel the Castellan transportation for tonight. All of it? Yes, I understand they're already at the restaurant. That's rather the point. Third call, Sofia, the soprano scheduled to perform at La Dama. Tonight, call her immediately and tell her the performance is canceled. Double her fee, paid from my personal account. And then, I need you to contact everyone on the Castellan event list for tonight within 15 minutes. Walking through the elegant streets of Ixample, I had systematically dismantled Margarita Castellan's birthday celebration. The kitchen would discover a gas leak, requiring immediate evacuation. The cars meant to take the party to the private flamenco performance would never arrive. The soprano would not appear. The exclusive nightclub booked for after-dinner drinks would regretfully inform them their reservation had been lost. By morning, every luxury vendor in Barcelona would know that the Castellan family was persona non grata, with Elevado events a virtual blacklist in a city where social connections were oxygen. I hailed a taxi and directed it to my office in Poblenou. As the city lights blurred past the window, I felt no triumph, only a hollow space where my marriage had been. Not just tonight, but for years, perhaps always. My phone buzzed with incoming texts from Xavier. Where are you? This is childish. The chef is saying there's a problem with the kitchen. What did you do? My mother is upset. Is that what you wanted? The last one made me laugh out loud, startling the taxi driver. Come home so we can talk about this like adults. Home, as if we had ever built one together. The office was quiet when I arrived, my team having left hours ago. I kicked off my heels and padded barefoot across the polished concrete floors to my private office. The wall of windows overlooked the city. Barcelona spread out before me like a glittering tapestry, the same view that had made me lease this space when I could barely afford it. I poured myself a generous glass of the whiskey I kept for client meetings and sank into my desk chair, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened, what I had just done. My phone buzzed again. Xavier, of course. This is completely unprofessional. You're jeopardizing your business over a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding? Or was it the most honest interaction I'd had with his family in 3 years? I thought back to our early days, when Xavier had seemed so different from his family, more open-minded, more modern. Had that been real, or just another carefully curated facade? Had he ever intended to build a life with me that wasn't shadowed by his family's disapproval? My computer pinged with an incoming email. Lucia, my assistant, are you okay? Just heard from Marcel about the Castellan event cancellations. Should I come in? I typed back, I'm fine, taking care of some overdue business. See you tomorrow. I turned off my phone and stared out at the city. Somewhere out there, in one of those twinkling lights, Margarita Castellan's perfect birthday celebration was imploding. And somewhere else, my husband was realizing exactly who he had married, not the accommodating, grateful outsider they had tried to shape me into, but the woman who had built something from nothing. The woman who knew her worth. At midnight, I kicked into action. I called my lawyer and arranged for divorce papers to be drawn up immediately. I contacted my bank and transferred my personal assets to accounts Xavier couldn't access. I emailed my building manager to change the access codes to my private apartment in Elborn, the one I'd kept but rarely used after moving in with Xavier. By dawn, I had systematically extricated myself from my marriage with the same precision I used to plan million-euro events. The only thing left was to collect my belongings from Xavier's apartment. I timed my arrival for when I knew he would be at his office. The doorman greeted me normally. Word hadn't spread yet. Upstairs, I moved through the apartment like a ghost, collecting only what mattered. My grandmother's jewelry, my personal documents, the few clothes I had owned before meeting Xavier. Everything else, all the trappings of the life I had tried to build within the constraints of the Castellan family expectations, I left behind. As I was zipping my final suitcase, I heard the front door open. What are you doing? Xavier stood in the bedroom doorway, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. Exactly what it looks like, I replied, continuing to pack. Elena, stop this nonsense. Last night was unfortunate, but you're blowing it completely out of proportion. I looked up at him, really looked at him, and saw for the first time how small he seemed, how diminished. The man I had fallen in love with had seemed so assured, so complete unto himself. But that man had never existed. The real Xavier, was this someone who couldn't stand up to his family, who found it easier to laugh along with my humiliation than to defend me? Do you know what I realized last night? I said, sitting on the edge of the bed, when I walked into that dining room and saw there was no place for me. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. It was a mistake with the reservation. No, it wasn't. But that's not what I realized. I met his eyes steadily. I realized that I've been fighting for 3 years to earn a place at a table where the food is mediocre and the company is worse. That's unfair, is it? Your family has made it clear from day one that I don't belong. And you, my voice caught, but I forced myself to continue. You never once chose me over them. Not when it mattered. That's not true. I married you, and then spent 3 years trying to reshape me into someone they would accept. I stood, pulling my suitcase upright. The joke is, even if I had succeeded, even if I had erased every trace of the woman who built a company from nothing, it still wouldn't have been enough. To them, I'll always be the party planner who got lucky. Xavier stepped forward, reaching for my hand. Elena, please. We can work through this. I'll talk to them. I pulled away. That's the saddest part. After last night, after everything that's happened, you still think this is something that can be fixed with a conversation. As if your mother will apologize for deliberately humiliating me, and we'll all laugh about it over Sunday dinner. Then, what do you want me to do? And there, it was the question that revealed everything. He was still looking for instructions, still trying to find the path of least resistance. I want you to have been the man I thought I married, I said quietly. But that's not possible, because he never existed. I handed him the divorce papers my lawyer had couriered over at first light. My attorney will contact yours. I've been more than fair with the settlement terms. His face hardened as he glanced at the paperwork. You've been planning this. No, I've been preparing for it. There's a difference. I moved past him toward the door. Last night just confirmed what I've suspected for a long time. There will never be a seat for me at your family's table. And I've finally realized I don't want one. You're making a mistake, he called after me. You're emotional right now, not thinking clearly. I turned back one last time. That's where you're wrong, Xavier. For the first time in years, I'm seeing everything with perfect clarity. 3 months later, I stood on the rooftop terrace of the Hotel Arts, overlooking the Mediterranean. All around me, Barcelona's elite mingled and sparkled, glasses of champagne catching the sunset's golden light. On the surface, it looked like any other high society event my company might organize, beautiful people in beautiful clothes, celebrating something most of them barely cared about. But this was different. This was my reemergence, my statement. After leaving Xavier, I had thrown myself into my work with renewed passion. Elevado events had always been successful, but now it was thriving, booked solid for the next 18 months, with a waiting list of clients eager to pay premium prices for our services. The whispers about what had happened with the Castellan family had only enhanced my reputation. Elena Morales was not someone to cross. The event tonight was ostensibly a charity gala for ocean conservation, but everyone understood its subtext. This was my declaration of independence. Elena, a warm voice at my elbow, drew me from my thoughts. Spectacular as always, Carla Vidal, fashion designer, tastemaker, and one of the few genuinely kind people in Barcelona's upper echelon, air-kissed my cheeks. The jellyfish ice sculptures were inspired, she continued, and that projection mapping on the pool. People will be talking about it for months. Thank you, I said. I'm glad you could make it. I wouldn't have missed it. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. Especially not with the guest list. Very interesting choices. She meant, of course, the careful curation of attendees. Everyone who was anyone in Barcelona was here, except the Castellan family and their innermost circle. Their absence was conspicuous, deliberate, and widely noted. In the social calculus of the city, it sent a clear message. Sides had been chosen, and the Castellans had lost. Have you seen who just arrived? Carla nodded toward the entrance. Apparently, some invitations crossed in the mail. I turned to see Rafael Castellan and his wife hovering uncertainly by the door, scanning the crowd. Someone not me had sent them an invitation. An interesting development. Excuse me, I murmured to Carla, crossing the terrace with measured steps. Rafael spotted me approaching and straightened his spine, a cornered animal preparing for confrontation. Rafael, I greeted him with professional politeness. This is unexpected. Elena, he nodded stiffly. His wife, a timid woman who had always been kind to me, offered a hesitant smile. I think there may have been a misunderstanding with the invitation, I said. Rafael's jaw tightened. We were invited. Not by me. A flush crept up his neck. Are you refusing us entry? Not at all, I replied smoothly. You're welcome to stay. I simply wanted to ensure there was no confusion about the circumstances. What I was really saying was clear. You're here on my terms now. In my world. At my table. Things change, Raphael, I added quietly. Social landscapes evolve. I'm sure you've noticed. And he had. Everyone had. In the months since my split from Xavier, the balance of power had shifted subtly but unmistakably. The Castellan family's social invitations had dwindled. Their business connections had cooled. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that could be directly attributed to me, just a gradual relegation to the periphery of the circles they had once dominated. It turned out that in modern Barcelona, old money and family names carried less weight than connections, influence, and the ability to create experiences people desperately wanted to be part of. All things I possessed in abundance. Xavier asks about you, Raphael said, a last desperate play. Does he? I raised an eyebrow. How nice. Please give him my regards. I turned to his wife with a warmer smile. Maria, the silent auction includes a weekend at that spa in Mallorca you mentioned loving. You should take a look before the bidding closes. With that, I walked away, leaving them to navigate the party on their own. I hadn't banned them, hadn't created a scene, I had simply acknowledged the new reality. They were no longer the gatekeepers. I was. Later, as the party reached its peak, I stood at the edge of the terrace, looking out over the city I had made my own. Barcelona sprawled before me, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. Behind me, laughter and music swelled as another perfectly orchestrated moment unfolded. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from Xavier, the first direct contact since I had walked out of his apartment 3 months ago. I miss you. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long moment, remembering the woman I had been when we met, hungry for validation, for belonging, for the easy certainty he seemed to possess. She seemed like a stranger now, that woman who had contorted herself to fit into a space that was deliberately made too small for her. I deleted the message without responding and slipped my phone back into my clutch. Senora Morales. A waiter appeared at my side. It's time for your speech. I nodded, straightening my shoulders. I wore red tonight, a custom-made gown that moved like water and caught the light like fire. Not understated, not appropriate, not designed to blend in with Castellan family portraits. It was a dress designed to be seen, to command attention, to declare presence. As I made my way to the small stage, the crowd parted before me. These were my people now, not because of who I had married or what family I belonged to, but because of what I had built, what I continued to build. I stepped up to the microphone and gazed out at the glittering crowd. Something settled in my chest, not happiness exactly, but something more enduring, the quiet certainty of knowing exactly where I belonged. Thank you all for coming tonight, I began. When I founded Elevado Events 7 years ago, people asked me why I would choose such an uncertain path. My voice carried across the terrace, strong and clear. In the distance, the Mediterranean stretched toward the horizon, vast and deep and constantly in motion, belonging to no one and everyone all at once. Like me,